It was a cold evening in the city, and Lena walked through the dark. Empty streets with her daughter, Mia. The wind cut through her thin jacket, and she could feel the chill in her bones. Her daughter walked beside her, holding her hand tightly. The little girl's stomach growled, a sound that filled the silence of the night. Lena looked down at her and smiled weakly, but her heart was heavy. She didn't have anything to give her. Lena had once lived a good life, but everything changed when her husband died in an accident. Since then, she had struggled to make ends. There were days when she didn't know where their next meal would come from. And now, after months of living in the streets, she had reached the breaking point. The night was quiet, except for the sound of their footsteps echoing off the pavement. They passed by buildings that had once been beautiful, but were now run down and abandoned. People lived in those buildings, just like Lena and Mia, trying to survive day by day. But Lena knew that their lives were different. She was a mother, and her first job was to take care of Mia. Mia deserved better than this. Lena didn't know how to give her the life she wanted. As they walked, Lena's mind raced. She was tired of the cold, tired of the hunger, and tired of trying to survive in a world that seemed so indifferent to her struggle. She looked down at Mia, her heart breaking. What kind of mother am I? She thought. How can I keep failing her? She had heard rumors, stories of people who could help if you were desperate enough. Stories of men who were willing to pay for a night to help you out of your misery in exchange for something simple. Just one night, Lena thought to herself. One night is all it will take to get food for Mia. One night is all I can offer. Thought filled her with shame, but also with a kind of strange hope. It was the only option she had left. And so, she walked to the area where she had heard the men would be. She had seen them before, standing in the dark corners of the streets. They always seemed to be waiting for someone like her. She didn't know if this would work. She was willing to try. Ethan was sitting on a bench, his coat wrapped tightly around his body, trying to ignore the cold. He wasn't from this part of town, but business had taken him here. The neighborhood had a way of pulling you in, making you think you were safe even when you weren't. It wasn't the first time he had walked these streets. But tonight, he was tired. Tired of seeing the same sad faces. Tired of the world's unfairness. Ethan had his own problems, though none as severe as what others had to endure. But seeing the desperation in people's eyes always stuck with him. He had grown up with privilege, but he knew the world was not kind to those who had nothing. And now, as he sat there, he found himself wondering what he was really doing with his life. Maybe it's time I make a difference, he thought. His thoughts were interrupted when he saw her. Lena, she was standing a few feet away, her eyes searching the area, almost as if she was looking for someone. She looked out of place here, unlike the other women who roamed these streets. Lena's face was drawn, tired, and her clothes were old and faded. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she held her daughter's hand, the care she took with each step, that caught Ethan's attention. She must be a mother, he thought, his heart softening. He didn't know why, but he felt something stir inside him. He had seen many things in his life, but this was different. He watched as she walked slowly, carefully, toward him. When she reached the bench, she stopped, looking at him for a moment. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need help." Ethan raised an eyebrow. He was about to ask what kind of help she needed, but then he saw the small girl tugging at Lena's sleeve, her face pale and tired. Lena glanced down at Mia, and then back at Ethan, almost as if she was unsure of how to continue. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quickly. I'm trying to get some food for my daughter. I don't have money, but I'll do anything. I can stay for just one night, if that's what it takes." Ethan blinked, trying to process what she said. He had heard stories like this before, but hearing it so directly shook him. He could feel a deep sense of sympathy for her. But more than that, he could feel a pull to do something, anything, to help. Lena was waiting for a response, her face nervous. Ethan could tell she wasn't asking for herself, but for her daughter. She had given up everything, her dignity, her pride, just to make sure Mia didn't go hungry tonight. Ethan thought for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing on him. He didn't know what had brought him to this moment, but something inside told him that he couldn't let this go on any longer. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I won't take what you're offering, but I'll help you. Both of you." Lena's eyes widened in shock, her mouth opening but no words coming out. She didn't understand. "I have a place, a home," Ethan continued, speaking gently. "You and your daughter can stay there. You don't have to offer anything in return. I just want to help." Lena stood frozen, her mind racing. But why? She wanted to ask. Why would someone like him help someone like me? But she didn't say the words. Instead, she just nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Ethan stood up, his expression sincere. "Let me take you both home. It's the least I can do." That's so that night, instead of giving up her dignity for food, Lena and Mia were given something far more valuable, a chance at a new beginning. The small house was warm and quiet. It was nothing like the cold streets where Lena and Mia had spent the past few months. The floors were clean, the walls painted a soft, calming color. There was a kitchen with a stove, a table, and chairs. A small living room with a couch sat near the window, the curtains gently moving with the breeze. It was a home, a real home. Lena stood at the doorway, still unsure if this was real. It had all happened so quickly. One moment, she was walking the streets with Mia, hoping for a miracle. The next, they were being led into a place that felt like a dream. "This can't be real," she thought. "This man. Why would he help us?" Ethan had given them a key to the house, explaining that it was theirs for as long as they needed it. Had gone out of his way to make sure it was safe and comfortable. And while Lena didn't fully trust him yet, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. For the first time in a long while, she felt like they were going to be okay. Mia was. Already exploring the house, she ran from room to room, her small feet making light taps against the hardwood floors. Lena watched her daughter with a mix of gratitude and worry. Mia had never had a space of her own before. She had never known a place where she could run freely, without worrying about where they would sleep at night. "It's beautiful, Mommy," Mia said, her voice full of wonder. She was standing in the small bedroom, looking at the bed. The blankets were soft, and there was a small nightstand with a lamp. Lena smiled at her daughter, trying to hold back the tears. She wanted to believe that this was real, but the fear of losing it all still gripped her heart. She was used to disappointment, used to being let down by people who promised to help but never did. And while Ethan seemed kind, Lena couldn't forget the struggles of her past. Why would he help us? She wondered. Just then, Ethan entered the house again. He had gone out for groceries, and now he was carrying bags filled with food.
Lena had
never been able to buy so much food at once. She watched as he placed the bags on the kitchen counter, his movements calm and steady. "I thought you might like some food," Ethan said, looking at Lena with a friendly smile. "There's pasta, some vegetables, bread, and a few snacks for Mia." Lena stood there, unable to find the words to thank him. Why is he doing this? Thought again. What does he expect in return? Ethan noticed her silence. He paused for a moment before speaking again. "I know it's hard to trust people," he said gently, "but I'm not asking for anything. I want to help. I know what it's like to be alone and to struggle. No one should have to go through that. Not you, not Mia." Lena felt a lump form in her throat. She couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken to her like that without any strings attached, without any hidden motives. "I'm not asking for anything in return," Ethan repeated, noticing her hesitation. "But if you ever need anything at all, you can come to me." Lena took a deep breath, trying to push away the doubts in her mind. "He's just being kind," she told herself. "It's hard to believe, but maybe this is real." Mia ran back into the kitchen, holding a packet of cookies she had found in one of the bags. "Mommy, look what I found. Can we eat them?" she asked excitedly. Lena chuckled softly, wiping away a tear that had fallen without her realizing. "Yes, sweetie," she said, smiling. "We can eat them." The rest of the evening was spent in a quiet, peaceful manner. Ethan had left them to settle in, promising to check on them the next day. Lena and Mia ate together at the small kitchen table. For the first time in so long, Lena didn't have to worry about where their next meal would come from. She didn't have to keep looking over her shoulder, fearing that someone would take what little they had. That night, as Lena lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's words. "I want to help." It wasn't just talk. He'd already done so much for them without asking for anything in return. And yet Lena's heart was still filled with doubt. She was scared. She didn't know how to let someone help her without feeling like she owed them something. She glanced at Mia, who was already asleep beside her. The soft sound of her breathing filled the room. Lena closed her eyes and thought about what Ethan had said. Maybe, maybe I can trust him. The next few days passed by quietly. Ethan came by each morning to check on them, bringing more food, offering small tasks around the house, and always leaving with a smile. He didn't ask for anything, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that he was too kind, too willing to help. She wondered what his real intentions were, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find anything to suggest he was doing this for any reason other than kindness. One afternoon, as Lena was cleaning the house, she received a knock on the door. She opened it cautiously, unsure of who it might be. Standing in front of her was Ethan, but this time he was holding something in his hands, a small bundle wrapped in a cloth. "I thought you might need this," he said, handing it to her. "Some clothes for Mia. I wasn't sure of her size, but I figured you could use something new." Lena looked down at the bundle, feeling a wave of gratitude and disbelief. She had never had someone care this much, especially not someone she barely knew. It was too much, too kind. "Thank you," she said, quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt the words fall from her lips as if they were too small compared to the enormity of his generosity. Ethan smiled, but there was no expectation in his eyes. "You're welcome," he said simply, before turning and walking back down the path toward his car. Lena stood there for a moment, holding the bundle in her hands. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel so alone. The days passed slowly, but each one felt like a small step toward something better. Lena had always been used to moving from place to place, never staying anywhere for long. But now, in the small house Ethan had given them, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Every morning, the sunlight would stream through the windows, filling the rooms with a warm glow. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lena could breathe. She wasn't running anymore. Mia was adjusting well to the new life. The first few days, the little girl had been nervous. She didn't know how to act in a place where she wasn't afraid to fall asleep. She had asked a lot of questions, wondering why they had a real bed now, or why there was always food in the kitchen. But over time, Mia started to play and laugh again, running around the house like a child should. Lena watched her with a deep sense of relief. That afternoon, Lena sat at the kitchen table, sorting through some of the clothes Ethan had brought. She unfolded the soft, new clothes for Mia and ran her fingers over the fabric. "These are too nice for us," she thought. "Why is he being so kind?" She couldn't stop asking herself that question. Ethan had given them everything without asking for anything in return, and while she was grateful, it was hard to accept. After everything she had been through, trust wasn't something Lena could give easily, but she was trying to accept the help and build a better life for Mia. She had never felt more determined. Maybe this is the fresh start we need, she thought. Ethan had made it clear that they didn't owe him anything. He had told her over and over that all he wanted was for them to have a safe place to stay, to get back on their feet. But still, Lena felt conflicted. She didn't know how to explain her feelings. She had always been taught to be independent, to never rely on anyone. But now, she found herself in a position where she had no choice. She had to trust him, at least for now. That evening, as Lena was putting Mia to bed, she heard a knock on the door. At first, she hesitated. She wasn't expecting anyone, and she still wasn't fully used to this quiet life. Who could it be? She wondered. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat. The face was calm, but there was a spark of concern in his eyes. "I brought some things," Ethan said, holding out a bag. "Some food and a few extra supplies. I didn't want to leave you without anything." Lena felt a lump form in her throat. Why is he doing this? She thought again, but this time there was no anger or bitterness in her heart, just confusion and a growing sense of gratitude. Thank you, she said quietly, taking the bag from him. You've already done so much. We don't need more. Ethan smiled, his eyes kind but firm. I know, he said, but I want to make sure you're okay. You're not alone anymore, Lena. Lena felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just the kindness or the food he brought, it was the way he said it. You're not alone anymore. It was the first time in so long that she had heard someone say those words to her. She had forgotten what it felt like to truly have someone care for her well-being. You've been through a lot, Ethan continued. We're still strong. I see it. You don't have to be strong all the time, though. It's okay to let others help. Lena didn't know how to respond. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. For a moment, she just stood there, looking at him. He's different, she thought. Not like anyone I've ever met.
Thank you,
she said again, this time with a sincerity she hadn't shown before. We'll be okay now, Ethan nodded. I believe you will. With that, he turned to leave, but not before looking over his shoulder at her once more. If you ever need anything, he said, don't hesitate to ask. As Lena closed the door behind him, she leaned against it for a moment, taking a deep breath. Maybe he's right, she thought. Maybe I don't have to do everything on my own. The next few days were spent settling in. Lena found herself spending more time with Mia, playing with her and teaching her new things. She didn't have to worry about where they would sleep, or how to feed Mia. For the first time in a long time, Lena had the freedom to focus on being a mother. She began cleaning and organizing the house, making it truly feel like home. She hung curtains in the living room and made sure Mia's room was cozy. It felt good to be productive, to have a space to call their own. For the first time, Lena wasn't just surviving, she was living. But despite the calm, there was a part of her that still couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. She was grateful, yes, but also afraid that it was all too good to be true. That someday, something would happen and they would lose it all again. One afternoon, as she was sitting on the porch, staring at the peaceful neighborhood, she heard footsteps approaching. She turned and saw Ethan walking toward her, carrying a toolbox in his hands. Thought I could help with a few things around the house, he said with a friendly smile. I know it's been a bit much, so I thought I'd lend a hand. Lena smiled back, though the gesture felt strange. She wasn't used to having someone care so much. I'm doing okay, she said. But thank you. Ethan set the toolbox down and looked at her, his expression softening. I know you're strong. Lena, but no one should have to do everything alone. Lena looked down at her hands, unsure of how to answer. She had spent so much time pushing people away, afraid to trust them. But Ethan was right. She didn't have to do it alone anymore. Thank you, she whispered again, this time letting the words mean something more than just gratitude. They were an acknowledgement, a promise to herself that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to accept help as Ethan worked on the house. Lena felt a quiet sense of peace. The fear of the unknown still lingered in her heart, but she was learning to let it go, little by little. For the first time in years, she believed that there was hope, that maybe, just maybe, she and Mia could have the future they deserved. Lena had never expected to feel like this again. She had spent so many years on the edge just getting by, trying to survive. But now, in the small house with its soft light and warm walls, it felt as if the world was offering her a chance to heal. The house was quiet now, the air filled with the scent of fresh flowers she had placed on the windowsill. Mia was asleep in her room, curled up in the bed Ethan had bought for her. Yet, despite the peace that surrounded her, Lena's heart remained heavy. She couldn't shake the thoughts that had begun to creep into her mind ever since Ethan had given them the house, the nagging question that always seemed to return, why? Why would someone like him help someone like her? And more than that, why would he continue to do it when he expected nothing in return? Lena sat by the window, looking out at the darkening sky. The wind outside made the branches of the trees sway, casting shadows across the yard. It was peaceful, but the peace felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sound at the door. A knock. It was soft, but it echoed in the quiet house. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting anyone. She stood up, her feet moving automatically as she walked toward the door. When she opened it, she wasn't prepared for the sight of the man standing there. It was someone from her past, a man she had hoped she would never see again. Milo. Milo's presence in front of her was like a blast from the past, a reminder of everything she had tried to leave behind. His eyes were cold, and his face was set in a way that made her feel like she was being judged. He was tall, built, and his dark hair was cut short. The look in his eyes was familiar, one she had seen many times before. It was the look of someone who had taken everything from her and left her with nothing. "Lena," he said, his voice low and gruff. "We need to talk." Lena stepped back instinctively. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I don't have anything to say to you." Milo pushed the door open slightly, just enough to let himself in. Lena tried to close it, but he was stronger than she remembered. He stepped inside without waiting for her permission, his presence taking over the room. "You think you can just run away from everything?" Milo sneered. "You owe me, Lena. You owe us." Lena felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. She hadn't seen Milo in months, not since she had left that life behind. The life where she had been forced to make horrible choices just to survive. It was a life she had promised herself never to return to. But Milo wasn't the type of person who would. "Just let her go." "I don't owe you anything," Lena said firmly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm done with that life." Milo's expression hardened. He took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "You think you can just walk away?" he asked, his voice cold and threatening. "You've been running for too long, Lena. You think you're safe here? You think that man is going to protect you?" Lena's heart raced. The mention of Ethan made her feel vulnerable. She had been trying so hard to forget the things that had happened, to believe that they could start over. But now, with Milo standing in front of her, all her fears were rushing back. "He has nothing to do with this," Lena said, her voice shaking. "I'm not going back. I'm not doing this anymore." Milo's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You think you can just walk away from everything? From us?" "I don't think so, Lena." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "And if you don't come willingly, I'll make sure that man of yours understands why he should stay out of this." Lena's chest tightened. She could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her, suffocating her. She didn't want to go back to that life. She didn't want to risk Mia's safety, but Milo was threatening everything she had worked so hard to build. She knew she had to act fast. With a sudden burst of courage, she stepped back from Milo and slammed the door shut. The sound of it locking echoed through the house, but it wasn't enough to calm the fear building inside her. She had no idea what Milo would do next. She couldn't risk him coming back, not when everything she had built was on the line. Lena rushed to Mia's room and closed the door behind her. She found her daughter sleeping soundly, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. Mia was safe, but how long would that last? How long before the past came back to destroy everything? Lena's heart was racing. She had no idea what to do. She couldn't call Ethan. She couldn't put him in danger. Had already given them so much, but this was different. This was her problem, her past, and she needed to protect Mia at all costs. Suddenly, she heard a knock again, but this time it was louder, more insistent. It was Milo. "I'm not leaving until we talk," he called from the other side of the door. Lena's mind was spinning. She had to do something. She couldn't let Milo tear apart their new life. She reached for her phone and called Ethan. It rang a few times before Ethan's voice answered. "Lena, what's wrong?" "Milo's here," Lena said, her voice barely above. A whisper. "He wants me to come back. He's threatening you." There was silence on the other end of the line. Lena's heart raced as she waited for Ethan's response. Finally, his voice came through, calm but firm. "Stay inside. Lock the door. I'm coming over right now." Lena didn't know what Ethan could do, but hearing his voice gave her some comfort. She wasn't alone anymore. Lena stood in the dim light of the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear Milo's voice outside, his words like a heavy weight pressing against her. The door was locked, but that didn't feel like enough. Every part of her wanted to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. She had already been running for so long. "I can't go back," she thought desperately. It's not after everything I've fought for. She glanced over at Mia's bedroom, soft sound of her daughter's peaceful breathing drifting through the silence of the house. She was safe for now, but what if Milo came back? What if this was just the beginning of something worse? Lena's hand shook as she reached for her phone. She needed Ethan. She needed his help, even if she didn't want to drag him into this. The last thing she wanted was for him to get hurt because of her past. As her phone rang, Lena's mind raced.
What?
Will he say? What will he do? Will he protect us? The phone clicked, and Ethan's voice came through, strong and reassuring. Lena, are you okay? Her voice cracked as she spoke, but she pushed forward. Milo's here. He says he's not leaving until we talk. There was a brief pause, and Lena held her breath. Ethan's words came next, calm, but filled with authority. Stay inside. Lock the door, and don't let him in. I'm coming over right now. Lena nodded, though he couldn't see her. She felt a small wave of relief, but it didn't last long. What if Milo didn't leave? What if he came inside anyway? She glanced toward the front door, as if expecting him to burst through at any moment. Hurry, she whispered, her voice shaking with fear. Please, hurry. Ethan didn't answer, but she knew he was already on his way. She hung up and turned her attention to Mia's room. The little girl had no idea what was going on, and Lena wanted to keep it that way. She didn't want Mia to see the fear in her mother's eyes. She didn't want her daughter to worry. Lena made her way to the window and peered out through the curtains. She could see Milo standing on the front porch, his arms crossed, a cold, hard look on his face. He wasn't leaving, wasn't going to give up. What does he want from me? She thought. Then, without warning, she heard a sound from the street, a car approaching. She knew who it was even before the headlights shone through the window. Ethan's car pulled up to the front of the house, the engine turning off with a quiet hum. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She rushed to the door and opened it before she even thought about it. Standing in front of her, Ethan looked calm, but his eyes were focused, determined. He was here to protect them, and that was all that mattered. Ethan, Lena said, her voice filled with relief. He nodded once, glancing past her to the door where Milo stood, still watching them. His eyes narrowed when he saw the other man standing there. Stay inside, Ethan said softly, his voice steady. Let me handle this. Lena didn't want to leave him alone with Milo, but she knew it was the right thing to do. Be careful, she whispered, though she knew Ethan didn't need her warning. He was a man who didn't show fear, even when it was obvious that Milo had the advantage. As Ethan stepped outside, Lena closed the door behind her. She stood by the window, her eyes fixed on the scene unfolding in front of the house. Emilo's voice carried through the air, his words sharp and demanding. You think you can just walk in and act like nothing happened? Milo was saying, his voice dripping with anger. She's mine, Ethan. She always will be. Ethan's voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the tension in the air. I'm not interested in what you think, Milo, he said, his words slow and deliberate. But what I am interested in is making sure Lena and her daughter are safe, and you're not welcome here. Milo laughed, the sound dark and mocking. You really think you can just protect them from me? He sneered. You don't know who you're dealing with? She owes me everything. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't hear what else was said, but she knew that the situation was escalating. Why does he think I owe him anything? She wondered, her mind spinning. I left that life behind. I've worked so hard to get away from him. She turned away from the window and moved toward the kitchen, her hands trembling as she wiped them on her jeans. Please let this be over soon, she thought. A few moments later, the front door opened again, and Ethan stepped inside. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes that told Lena the confrontation was far from over. It over? She asked, her voice shaky. Did he leave? Ethan nodded. For now, he said. But he'll be back, Lena. He won't just give up that easily. Lena's heart sank. She had known deep down that Milo wouldn't go away. But hearing it from Ethan made the truth even harder to accept. What do we do now? Lena asked, feeling the weight of the question pressed down on her shoulders. She had no idea what to do. She didn't want to leave this house, not when she had just started to feel safe. But if Milo kept coming back, they wouldn't be able to stay here forever. Ethan looked at her, his expression softening as he took a step closer. You don't have to worry about that right now, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I'll make sure you and Mia are safe. Whatever it takes. Lena looked into his eyes, and for the first time she felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know how this would end, but she knew she wasn't facing it alone anymore. Ethan was here, and he would stand by her side no matter what. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. Ethan didn't say anything more. He simply nodded, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. He didn't need to say anything else. Lena knew that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. The days following the confrontation with Milo were quiet. Ethan kept his promise to Lena. He stayed close, always checking in, making sure they were safe. Milo had not returned, and for now, it seemed like the storm had passed. But the unease in Lena's heart was still there, just beneath the surface. She didn't know how long they would be safe. She didn't know if Milo would come back, angry and determined to take back what he thought was his. Lena spent her days settling into the life she had never thought possible. Every morning she woke up to a house filled with warmth. The house that had once felt so strange to her now felt like home. She spent time with Mia, playing with her, teaching her things that every mother dreamed of teaching her child. She worked around the house, cleaning, cooking, and making it their own. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and that was all that mattered. Mia had already started school nearby. Her little face lit up every time she talked about her new friends, the things she had learned, and how much fun she had. "Mommy, guess what I did today?" Mia would ask, her voice full of excitement every afternoon when Lena picked her up from school. "What did you do today, sweetie?" Lena would ask, her heart full of pride. "I drew a picture. It's a castle, and I put you and me in it," Mia would say, showing off her artwork with glowing eyes. Lena would smile and nod, looking at the picture. And thinking about how far they had come, from the streets to this, from fear to hope, it was nothing short of a miracle. It made everything worth it. But even as things began to settle, Lena couldn't stop worrying. She didn't know if she could ever fully feel safe until Milo was gone for good. Every knock on the door, every sound from the street made her jump. She couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. The peace they had was fragile and could be taken away in an instant. One afternoon, as Lena sat by the window, watching the sun begin to set, she heard the familiar sound of a car pulling into the driveway. She turned toward the door, her heart skipping a beat. It was Ethan. He was early today. That was unusual. He had told her he would be working late, and yet here he was, walking toward the door with a smile on his face. When he stepped inside, Lena didn't know what to expect. She had been expecting another quiet evening, just the two of them, and Mia, but Ethan had something in his hands. He stepped closer, and Lena could see that he was holding a small box wrapped in paper. "What's this?" Lena asked, curious but already feeling a flutter of hope in her chest. "It's for you," Ethan said with a smile. He placed the box in her hands and gave her a gentle nudge. "Go ahead, open it." Lena's fingers trembled as she untied the ribbon and carefully pulled off the paper. Inside the box was something simple, but to her, it felt like the world. It was a key, not just any key, but a small silver key that sparkled in the light. "A key?" Lena asked, puzzled but touched by the gesture. Ethan smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "It's a key to something more than just the house," he said softly. "It's a key to a new life. Your new life. One that's safe. One that's yours." Lena's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him, the meaning of his words sinking in. A new life. She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Ethan said, his voice steady and confident. "And I want to help you build that life. I want to be part of it, Lena. I care about you and Mia. You don't have to face the world alone anymore. You have me, and I want you to know that." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes. She had never expected this. She had never believed that someone could truly care for her like this. She had always been afraid that people would use her, take advantage of her, and leave her when things got hard. But Ethan wasn't like that. He was showing her day by day that it was possible to trust again. Lena looked at the key in her hand, and then back at Ethan. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" Ethan nodded. "I'm serious. I want to help you create a future. A real future. Not just one that's built on survival. I want to help you make your dreams come true, Lena." Lena couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had spent so many years just trying to survive, to make it through the next day. And now here was a man who was offering her a chance to truly live, to have a home, a family, and a future. It was more than she could have ever imagined. "Thank you," Lena whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. She had no other words. Her heart was too full, and she couldn't quite believe it was real. Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "This is just the beginning. Together, we'll make it happen. Together, we'll build a life that's strong and full of love. No more fear, Lena. No more running." Lena nodded, tears flowing freely now. She had never allowed herself to dream like this before. She had never thought she could have a life like this. But now, with Ethan by her side, she realized that anything was possible. Later that evening, as Lena sat at the kitchen table with Mia, she looked at the key in her hand and smiled. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have to face the world on her own. She had a new family now, and no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Mia looked up at her eyes sparkling with excitement. "What's that, Mommy?" Lena held up the key, her smile wide. "It's the key to our future, sweetie," she said softly. "A future where we're safe. A future where we can be happy." And as she looked at her daughter's face, full of hope and wonder, Lena knew that, no matter what came next, she had found something far more precious than she could have ever dreamed of. A family and a future worth fighting for.